So now we know how to draw things in one-point perspective, which is where the front face of a box or an object is looking at you square and straight on. So we end up with this front face facing us directly, and we end up with the three dimensions of space being represented by three different types of lines. Height is always represented with vertical lines, width is always represented with horizontal, and depth is always represented by diminishing lines going to our single vanishing point. Now we also know how to draw things in two-point perspective, which is where those objects have been turned, and we now no longer see the front face looking at us directly, but instead we see the vertical edge of our object. The height is still represented with that vertical line, but the width is now diminishing to the right vanishing point, and the depth is diminishing to the left. So we end up with two vanishing points. And so now we're going to learn how to draw using three-point perspective with three vanishing points. And it's not as tricky as it sounds. If you understand how to draw a box in two-point, three-point is just one tiny extra step, and you'll be able to draw things from a really cool perspective. So in your sketchbook, you're going to take a new piece of sketchbook paper, but this time, instead of having it in landscape mode, I want you to turn it to where it is in vertical portrait mode. What we're going to do is set up either a very high horizon line or a very low horizon line, and that is completely up to you. It's going to work either way. So I'm going to set up a low horizon line near the bottom of my page, maybe about an inch or so up from the bottom, and draw that all the way across. And on the left and right side, I'm going to create my normal left and right vanishing points, just like in two-point perspective. And then the only other thing that we have to add to this drawing is a third vanishing point. And since I drew my horizon line at the bottom, I'm going to draw my third vanishing point way up here at the very tip top of my page. I can put it somewhere towards the middle, approximately there, and now I basically have a nice triangle of space to work with those three vanishing points. Now if you drew your horizon line at the top of your page, your third vanishing point will be down here at the very bottom. So however you want to set it up, it's going to work either way. Now the only difference between two-point perspective and three-point perspective is we no longer have vertical lines. In a two-point perspective box, you start always with that nice vertical line, but this time the only difference is instead of it being vertical, whatever line you want to start with for a new box, it's going to instead diminish to that third vanishing point. So I'm going to line my ruler up with that third vanishing point, and I can make that line tilt anywhere that I want, as long as it's within this triangular space I've set up. And I'm going to start with a line, let's say right there. So this line is no longer vertical, it's now diminishing to that third vanishing point. Now I'm going to draw this box just like a two-point perspective cube, except anything that represents height, it's going to diminish to that third vanishing point. So our very next step is going to be to take the top and bottom to the left and the right vanishing point, just like a normal cube. And so now this is diminishing to the right vanishing point and the left vanishing point. So I have my two sides that go on and on and on forever, and now I need to cut them off. In two-point perspective, we would cut them off with a vertical, but this time, again, the only change is whatever would have been a vertical line now diminishes to that third vanishing point. And then to create the bottom edge, I just need to crisscross my corners. So the right corner goes to the left vanishing point. The left corner goes to the right vanishing point. Now, you can see what this box looks like, and instead of it being the edge that's facing us directly, like in 2-point perspective, now it is just the point or the corner of this box that's facing us directly, and all of the sides are now diminishing away from us, the left, right, and bottom. Now, if you drew your horizon line at the top, I'm going to show you what it would look like. I can just simply flip my paper over. Now, the cool thing about 3-point perspective, if you set up a high horizon line, you end up with what's called a bird's eye view, where it looks like you're way up high looking down on it, almost like a bird sort of flying over a cityscape, looking down on a bunch of buildings from up above. But if you set up a low horizon line, you have what's called a worm's eye view, which is where it looks like you are very low and you are looking up at the buildings. So if you've ever been to a really big city and you've looked up at those skyscrapers that are way, way, way super tall, that would be considered an example of a worm's eye view. And to draw that, you would use a 3-point perspective drawing like this. So now I'm going to draw a few more boxes and create sort of a miniature imagined architecture. You can either draw along with me if you would like, or you can jump around and create your own. The only good rule of thumb, though, that I need for you to follow is you do need to keep your drawing contained within this triangle of space. So now I'm going to continue adding onto my drawing by creating a few more boxes, and I'm going to follow the same exact steps that I used for that very first box. The hardest thing to get used to with 3-point perspective is just remembering that any height line is going to be represented by a diminishing line now going to that third vanishing point, but you'll sort of get the hang of it once you've done it a couple of times. It becomes second nature. So with 3-point perspective, it's important to remember every single line that you're drawing is a diminishing line. That's the only kind of line that there is. You just simply need to decide which vanishing point your line needs to go to. So if you ever get to a point where you're not sure, simply try a different vanishing point and you can usually figure it out because there's only 3 options. Now I can also make windows and extensions the same way that I would in 2-point perspective, except just making my height lines diminish to there. So if I want windows, I will start with the third vanishing point, deciding how tall I want them to be. Then they will go to the same vanishing point as the wall, so this wall diminishes to the right, so my windows will too. And then to cut off and make the height on the other side, it will again diminish to that third vanishing point. So now that window diminishes as well. So there's a window. Let me show you a cool extension so you can see what that looks like. Again, start with my height by going to that third vanishing point. This wall goes to the right, so to extend it outward, I need to extend it from the opposite vanishing point. So I'm going to come from the left and extend it out and out. To cut that plane off, I'm going to take that back to the third vanishing point. So now I have the left side of an extension, and now I need to make the right and the bottom. So I'm going to take those corners to my right vanishing point. To cut it off, take it back to my third for the height. And then for the bottom, again, crisscross my bottom corners. Right corner goes left, left corner goes right. And now I have a little extension. Inside my window, if I want to be able to see the inside of this building, I can also take this corner to my left vanishing point. And now you can see how this starts to look really cool. It's very similar to 2-point perspective. The only difference is whatever used to be a vertical line now goes to that third vanishing point. And if you take a look at this upside down, if you have a high horizon line, you can see how this looks now, like it's that bird's eye view where we're seeing it from above, looking down on these boxes. So now I'm going to speed through really fast and show you just adding some other architectural elements to this, adding more extensions and more windows. This is going to go really, really fast. You don't have to follow and copy along with exactly what I'm doing. I just want to show you kind of how, the same way like with 2-point perspective with the imagined architecture, you can just gradually build and add by adding extensions and simple windows. And the more you add, the cooler this drawing looks and the more complex it becomes. And this is definitely a skill that I would say the more you practice, the better at it you get. You'll build your confidence the more you work on it and become more skillful in completing this type of linear perspective style drawings. This is something that everybody can learn as long as you're willing to practice and learn a few rules and techniques.